Hi everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by Data Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have weekly events, and today is one of such events. If you want to find out more about the events we have, let me turn on the light. There is a link in the description. Go there, check it out, and you will see all the events we have. And we actually have quite a few now, 4 maybe. So check it out. Then do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This way you'll get notified about all the future streams like the one we have today. And last but not least, we have a great Slack community where you can hang out with other data enthusiasts, so check it out too. And during today's interview, you can ask any question you want. There is a pinned link in the live chat. Click on that link, ask your questions. I just complained now that slide I changed the interface, so maybe it will not look like that. But I hope you will figure out how to ask questions. So I'll be keeping an eye on that for the questions for today's interview. And with that, I'm stopping to share my screen. I'm opening the questions that Johanna prepared. And if you're ready, we can start.
Yeah, sure.
I just also want to make sure I pronounce your name correctly. Is it Isabella or?
Isabella, yes.
So this week we'll talk about continuous learning in data science, and we have a special guest today, Isabella. Isabella is a machine learning engineer and data scientist with 3 years of hands-on AI development experience. She has previous experience in computational research expertise, and she contributes to open source projects and run a newsletter dedicated to showcasing women's accomplishment in data science. Welcome to our interview.
Thank you so much. Really happy to be here.
So the questions for today's interview are prepared by Johanna Bayer, as always. Thank you, Johanna, for your help. And before we start, Isabella, let's start with your background. Can you tell us about your career journey so far?
Okay, so I come from a somewhat unusual background. My first degree is a bachelor in biological science, and I kind of knew I wanted to be a bioinformatician from the start. And I was very lucky that I was in a uni that let me pick and choose courses from other disciplines. So what I would do essentially is I would go to the computer science department and I would ask, can I enroll in your course? So I took like all those standard computer science classes like data structure, algorithms, and like object-oriented programming. And from that, I did a master's degree in bioinformatics. And I was co-opted for machine learning, and I sort of never left. Like right about the time I started my master's degree, it was the beginning of the boom of machine learning, and then I jumped in, and my entire career changed because of that. Because then I really like it, and I never really left.
Mhm. So it was a lucky coincidence, would you say?
Sorry?
Was it like a lucky coincidence? Like you weren't actively looking for a career in machine learning, it just happened, right?
No. I wasn't active learning for a career in machine learning. I like data, but I thought I would be more like a data engineer than I would be a machine learning.
Mhm,
And kind of like statistics was my getaway drug into machine learning because like once you
mhm,
understand like statistics and distributions, then you understand like linear modeling and then you understand functions. And before you know it, you're like, yes, transformers, they look cool. And it kind of just happened for me, but I'm really happy it happened that way. I think if I was starting machine learning because I was really passionate about AI, it would be a lot more overwhelming.
mhm,
So I was kind of just in the right place in the right time and completely fell in love with it.
mhm. Where did you study?
My bachelor's degree was in Brazil in a
Uh-huh.
university called Mato Grosso, Federal de Mato Grosso do Sul.
Mhm,
And then I got my master's degree in France in the University of Marseille in the
mhm.
south of France.
So are you from Brazil originally?
Yeah. I'm
Because
from Brazil
your
originally.
last name does not sound very French, right?
No, I'm not very French at all. I've been living here now for about 4 years, so
But you speak
recent.
French.
I do speak French.
Uh-huh. So you learned it before going to France.
Yeah, I learned before going to
Mhm.
France. I wouldn't dare to move to France without speaking any French. It's very hard.
Yeah, especially if it's not Paris, right? So we talked about living in France for a bit. So I lived in a small city, and with just English, it's very hard to survive there.
Well, I used to live in Marseille, and Marseille is different because it's
Hmm.
so touristic. Like you would hear people speaking Arabic and English and German on the street, especially in summer. In summer, it was a bit crazy. I remember like when the boats dock and they're full of like cruisers and tourists, you couldn't find water in the supermarket because the city cannot absorb all the tourists. So
Hmm.
it's a very different experience.
Okay.
But like around and to get, especially to get administrative work done, you really need to speak, I would say Spanish, but you really need to speak French.
Okay. And also, you didn't mention, but we did some research. Well, Johanna did some research. She looked at your LinkedIn profile and saw that you did quite a few internships while studying. And one of them was Inria, and Inria is quite well known. Well, I know them because this is where Scikit-learn started, but I know
Mhm.
that they do much, much more than just, Scikit-learn. So what did you work on there at Inria?
Okay.
And
So
what is Inria?
India is a French research institute. I think the name is like National Institute of Research and Automation, Research Intelligence and Automation. And then I remember they tell them, well, automation kind of just means AI now. Like they gave this name ages and ages ago. Before I did this internship, I didn't even knew India was the people who maintained Scikit-learn. I learned like a week before I started the internship, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in a big place, so much pressure. But I got this internship because in my master's degree, there was a career development module, and they would invite people to come and talk about their career paths. And especially because when you do like something that's interdisciplinary, it's quite a challenge then to find your footing after. And the researcher was Sebastian. He came and he was a mathematician by training, and he did apply things into sort of like biomarkers and cancer research. So he came, he gave his presentation, and I think 2 weeks later, I wrote to him. I was like, I really like your research. I did my bachelor thesis on biomarkers. And I was like, do you have a project that I could work on? Could I possibly do an internship? And he said yes. And then I worked with them, I think, for 2 months on creating models to predict patient response in cancer. So essentially, it's like oh my God, I'm not going to remember, but it's a type of lung cancer, a specific type of lung cancer that they wanted to predict if patient would respond to immunotherapy from just like a simple blood draw. And it was really super cool because the team had like we were at least five, and we would all sit in this open space. So like I would be coding in my computer, and I would have a question, and I could just ask the question to the team, and I would have an answer right away. It was really super enriching, a super cool experience, and I am still friends with some of the people I met when I was working there, and it was really awesome. So I recommend. I think they're super cool.
Is it in Paris or where is it?
No, this one it was the only team in Marseille. Like they had just moved to Marseille when I did the internship with them, but they were originally from Bordeaux, which is a
Mhm.
bit on the coast.
I have no idea where it is.
Like France is
Uh-huh.
like an hexagon.
Uh-huh.
Like if you
Okay.
think like
Yeah.
this, and then Bordeaux is in this corner of the hexagon,
Uh-huh. Okay.
like on
I mean,
top of
I
it.
of course know the name. I have heard the name. I just, yeah, even though I lived in France for a bit, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
only
France
know the
is
places that
it's
would I
quite big
visited.
too. So
Mhm.
I understand.
Okay. And does Inria do anything except machine learning, or is just fully focused on ML and AI and this kind of stuff?
No, I think they do. I think they do other stuff, more like statistical fundamental research. I think they just got to be really well known from AI and machine learning because they're really the forefront of it right now. Even I think the question, I never remember if it's spatting or splatting, but that was also co-published by them. So, and also France in general, the government has been pouring a lot of money into AI and
Hmm.
innovation. So I think they profit from that quite directly.
Hmm.
But
And
at
like,
very different centers.
yeah, and so like when I think about France, recently. I know it as a kind of center for AI because Mistral is from
Hmm.
there. So, and since I live in Germany, I think like, okay, why there are not so many German companies that do that?
No,
Yeah.
I think Macron was really pushing like, yes, everybody, we're gonna do AI, we're gonna be great at
Uh-huh.
it. But there are quite a few companies. There are Mistral, there's Giscard too, which is for evaluating RAG systems or LLMs in general. It's also based in Paris. Hugging Face.
Mhm. Yeah, right.
So Paris is it's becoming quite of a hub.
Yeah. Okay. And right now, if we open your LinkedIn and it says that you're a machine learning engineer but self-employed. So what
Yeah.
do you do? What are you working on?
So I'm working full time as a freelancer right now.
Mhm.
I cannot say the company I'm working for. I would have to get permission from them to do it. I have an NDA in place, but I am building RAG, more specifically like graph RAG system, and trying to automate the process of generating knowledge graphs for a company with direct applications into insurance systems. So it's quite a change
Mhm.
from what I did in the past, but it has been quite
Mhm.
nice. I've been wanting to freelance full time for a while, so I took an opportunity when it arrived.
So you've been doing this as a C for like 3 months, right? So it's pretty recent.
Yeah, yeah. But before that, I was also freelancing, but more as a data scientist.
Ah, okay. So basically, you've been a freelancer for quite some time, except now you changed your profile a little, right? So before you were a data
Yeah.
scientist. What did you do before?
So before this, I did quite a different things. My last freelance before this was in a company where we were taking essentially open source data from like geo-reference systems, and we were aggregating and processing them. Sometimes with a little bit of machine learning. Sometimes it was more based on what it was inside, like a rule-based classical database merging system, to get maps out of a specific region that they were interested in. So it was very data focused, different than being more model focused.
So did you start as a freelancer
No,
immediately after?
no. First I worked in a little bit of a research-based position. I wanted to get more research experience and see how that goes. And it was nice, but I don't think research like fully was what I expected it to be.
Mhm.
It's very like it's super cool when you see the papers out and you see the result.
Mhm.
But on a day to day, I felt like I had too much of an engineering and I wanted to get a product done and I wanted to
Mhm.
get, that really the final product out. Like I realize it makes me anxious when I'm working with something that does not have a clear deliverable and
Mhm.
I don't have like a clear set of what it's like. So I kind of changed for freelancing where
Mhm.
I could have that. But also now as a freelancer, I think I am too much of a researcher in mind. So I'm in the middle of the two. I have
Did you
to
do it
create my own
like,
position.
did you do some sort of PhD? A PhD were you a PhD student when you were working as a researcher, or it was just work?
No, I started as a PhD student
Uh-huh.
and decided it was just not for me.
Uh-huh. Okay. So basically, you were doing a PhD, you decided it's not for you, and then you thought, okay, I want to go to the industry, and you started as a freelancer
Hmm.
in the industry. So why didn't you just, join a company as a full-time employee? Why did you decide to be a freelancer?
Because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in the first place. Like I had an idea, but I wanted to experiment things. And I think like as a freelancer, like you change projects quite often, you get to meet new people, you see how different companies work. And that was the really like what sold it for me, like the ability to see more, see how things
Mhm.
work, get some hands-on experience with different things.
'Cause, to me, it looks, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, it looks like freelancing is more difficult in the sense that like you need to constantly look for clients. You also usually companies expect that you have a certain level of experience when they hire freelancers.
Mhm.
So to me, it looks like getting a full-time job as a usual employee is easier than a freelancer. So freelancing is like the doing it the kind of hard way. Yet you decided to do a freelancer first. So many people actually have problems with finding just a job after academia, right? It's
Mhm.
not that easy. But you decided to kind of skip the step to jump over finding like the usual full-time employment and just went directly to freelancing. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was a little bit. I don't, well, it is a bit stressful to be a freelancer sometimes. You do have to look for clients, you have to look for offers, you have to contact people. But I feel like it's not as difficult as people make it out to be, I think. It's just a different skill set. I think like also looking for a job can be quite hard and quite of a challenging thing. But I think eventually I want to have like a full-time job in a company where I do that. But when I have a more experience and
Uh-huh. Interesting.
more of a field, like more of a hands-on experience,
Uh-huh.
in the sense that I don't know, I think if you like different projects, if you are
Mhm.
curious about things work, being a freelancer is like a good option.
Mhm.
It allows you to try different things, to see different topics. And then I think the nice thing about being a freelancer too is that you're very much hired based on what you can immediately offer a company. So if you like learning new things, it can be quite of a good job, like a good career, because you can stay like if you like what is the latest technology you have enough time as a freelancer to pick that up on your own and see how it goes and then immediately apply that to a project.
Mhm. That's interesting. How did you go about finding your first client? Like, okay, you were doing a PhD, you understood that it's not for you, and then you decide, okay, I want to do a freelance to be a freelancer. I want to try different things. So how did you get your first client?
So I quit my PhD when I had enough. I quit it, and then I was like, I'm gonna look for a job, or I'm gonna see if I can freelance. So I post my CV in some places, and I was gonna move, like I was gonna relocate from where I was in Marseille to Lyon anyway. So I just post my CVs, and one day I remember because I was at the supermarket. And then like I got a call from somebody saying, "Oh, we're looking for a freelance. This is what we want. Would you be interested in this job?" And I was like, "Yes." And a week later, I had my first client. It was really like everything happened super fast.
Mhm. Okay. So that's it, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's no magical story, no side hustle. I just posted my CV everywhere, optimized my LinkedIn profile, and that was kind of it. I kind of I wish I had a more interesting story, but really, it was just that.
I mean, it's kind of actually good in the sense that it doesn't have to be complicated, right?
Yeah, I think it really also,
But you also had a good profile, right?
yeah, I think I was also a little bit lucky because I was always very much involved with projects outside of academia. So I actually had the skills for this job because I was part of another project, which was a AI for Good project coordinated by Ondina, which was very much based on like georeference technologies and geospatial libraries. So when they called me, I was like, yeah, I know how to do that because I was involved with this project where we
Mhm.
did something similar.
Mhm.
And the same thing for like the machine learning part. I got involved into a couple of open sources projects because I wanted to have that more machine learning focus experience as opposed to like a data science
Mhm.
or a full-time data scientist. And when like when the time come when I had a client who was looking for that profile, I had the skills that they needed for it.
Mhm.
So it was a little bit of luck and a little bit of
Mhm.
effort on my side to pick
Well,
up the
maybe
skills.
not a little bit of effort, because it sounds like you did quite a lot to actually, like, I mean,
Mm.
taking part in an AI for Good project and then learning something there and doing something there is quite some effort. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
you were also studying, you were working in academia, doing a PhD. you had to do a lot of other things, and then finding time and motivation to do an extra thing is quite some effort, right?
It is, but I don't know. I think open source can be so fun that it doesn't really feel like you're putting as much effort.
Okay.
Especially like with some projects, people are so nice and people are so motivating, and everybody is really like passionate about what they do, that you just wake up or you just get home to work and you're excited to do that. Or at
Mm,
least I get excited when I have to like do something and I know I will talk to these people who are invested in this project, who are really passionate. So I think it's a lot easier to work in those circumstances because you're surrounded by motivated people.
mhm,
You all share kind of the same vision. You're learning something new. And it's kind of a pressure-free environment too. If you're
mhm,
learning skills in like an academic setting or in a boot camp, you have like very high deadlines, very high expectations. Quite
mhm,
often in open source is a lot of like playtime, right? You have a
mhm,
model, you have an idea, and you just want to play and see what comes out of it. And I end up learning quite a lot when I have the space
mhm.
and people to share with and so forth.
Can you tell us more about these open source projects? What are those, and how did you find them?
So, like, I wish I had a great story to tell, but the first one that I got truly, truly deeply involved was the community course from Hugging Face. It was the computer vision community course. And the story of it, I was on Discord, and I'm a bit of a chronically online person. I was just on Hugging Face Discord and I saw people talking about this community project.
Mhm,
And then I saw somebody saying, oh, we created a channel for it.
mhm,
And I joined the channel, and on the channel, somebody had, okay, so we have this table of contents and we have a spreadsheet. If you want to contribute, sign to the spreadsheet. I signed to the spreadsheet. And then I spent the next 3 months of my life talking about this all the time and just like coming home after work and being like, yes, let's write things about computer vision and let's review PRs. And I made great friends on the course, like friends that I would have not made otherwise. And then the AI for Good project happened because somebody on this was being part of the project and they were like, oh, I'm doing this project. Do you want to join? And I was like,
mhm,
sure. And then I did that project. And then I met other people in that project who were doing other things. And then before I realized I was doing all these projects that I thought it was super interesting because once you know people, then they have ideas and they're like, oh, I have this idea. Do you have time? And
mhm,
then it comes from there. And I guess it's a little bit weird, but I think this is kind of like the side effect when people say you should network. It's because once you find a group of people who share the same passion and have
mhm,
the same ideas, then you become aware of what's going on, and people have like, oh, I want to try this, and you're like, sure, I have 3 hours. What do you want to do with it?
mhm,
And things just really took it from there. Like not a grand story. Just I wanted to do something with open source for quite a while, and I didn't know what to start. I
mhm.
saw somebody organizing something, and then I jumped on it.
Yeah, so for me, the main takeaway is like a summary of what you said is you hang out in communities, and you're being open uh, to opportunities. So you just see, okay, like something is going on, let me take a look. And then you see that it resonates with you and you jump on this and you take part.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's really not, it's very scary when you never done it, but once you're done for the first time, you see, okay, like this is okay. I can handle this.
Especially when it's a community project. Um, the scariest part is like when you start something new is like knowing where to start. But when you work with somebody else, it's kind of easier to have a plan and to know your next step. And
Mhm.
once you know your next step, you do your next step, and it's kind of clear what the next step is. And then step by step, you finish the thing.
True. And also like in community, like people naturally gravitate towards certain roles. Like certain people naturally become like the editors and filtering out ideas, and some people naturally become like the deadliners. And personally, I am not too good to keep tracking of a deadline outside of work. So I always appreciate when there's somebody that's coming like, okay, but we have to get this done by next week. It's like, when
Mhm.
do we need to get this done by next week?
Hmm.
It's really cool because you see really how different people
Hmm.
and how different ways of working can really make a project come together.
Hmm. So this community course on Hugging Face was it Discord, right? Was it?
Hmm.
You said it was about computer vision, right?
Hmm.
So what exactly did you do there?
So
Was it just one of the modules, or?
yeah, I work mostly on the first module, which is like what is computer vision, what is image processing, how do computers even see images, and like what are the classical techniques that happened. And then after that, I sort of became a reviewer for the course. So I reviewed quite a lot of the other units, mostly because the way that the course was structured, like once everybody was done, everybody made the pull request. And then it
Hmm.
became like, okay, we have 30 pull requests to review, like who
Hmm.
is available. And then I also contributed to like some parts of like introduction to what is transfer learning
Hmm.
and so forth. But it was really based on, by the time I joined, quite a lot of the fancy topics were taken, and the
Hmm.
introductory topics were quite free. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I can take the introductory topics.
Hmm.
Like I can work with this.
Hmm.
And it was
And
really nice.
how much computer vision experience did you have back then?
When I was working in academia, like my last internship in my master's degree and the beginning of my academic work, they were both in computer vision.
Mhm.
So I was quite familiar with it.
I'm also curious, like in order to teach something or in order to take part in a community course like that, how deep your knowledge should be so that you don't feel like, I don't know, an imposter.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Like I was very comfortable in the topics that I was working on, but there were definitely like people who were more beginners than me.
Mhm.
And I think they did a great job because what they did sometimes is like, oh, I don't really understand it. What do you think about it? And do you have a paper I could read or do you have a book that I would recommend? So even if they were not experts in those topics, they just put in the work to research about it. And since there was always somebody who knew more about the topic at hand, it was really like easy to guide each other to see like what to do and like what was right and what was wrong. And because there was also like people reviewing the pull requests, you could catch a lot of like
Mhm.
maybe mistakes or things that weren't so clear. So
Mhm.
in the end, I think maybe not all topics are beginner friendly,
Mhm.
but definitely they're even in complex projects, I think there's always a test that's more beginner friendly.
Mhm. And also, like, let's say you know the topic, you know computer vision because you did some projects in computer vision. You're not a beginner, and maybe some things they seem obvious to you,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah,
you don't spend
exactly.
much time explaining them. But when somebody is like has a fresh perspective on things, they don't necessarily have your experience. They look at your content and say, "Okay, like I don't understand. How did you jump
Yeah.
from this point to this point?"
Yeah, honestly, that's something that I really like about teaching because like when you do something on a daily basis, you kind of forget that that has no meaning for people in real life whatsoever. And then like people like ask you these questions and you're like, oh, I see. So like that's not common knowledge. And then you have to like circle back and try to explain it with like more care. And also in a way that's just more understandable too.
Hmm.
Like machine learning is one of those fields that there are so many words that mean the same thing. And there are so many complicated ways to say things that sometimes are not that complicated. So that's I think is really important, especially if
Hmm.
you are starting in the field.
Hmm. And so let's say I want to look to find a project like you did to take part in an open source project. It could be developing a course or maybe contributing to something, I don't know, to do some open source project, some other open source project. Where would you suggest to look for these projects? In which places? Like, could it be just random
Mhm.
communities, or there are specific places where you can be
I
to
think
find them?
okay. So first, if you use a specific model that's open source or a library that's open source, likely they either have a Slack or a Discord. So probably a good place to start is join there and just see what people are doing, see what developers are saying, see when things are being released, and then also check the issues. the tab of
Mhm.
the issues on GitHub, quite often there are some issues that are easy to fix or not so easy to fix. Or like when you're using a library, if you're using it pretty regularly, you spot things that are not optimal. You can also open yourself the issue or think about yourself how to do it. I think as long as you are really nice about it and really open, things work out fine. Another thing that I think could be cool is sometimes when you are in the documentation, they will explicitly say contribute to this or contribute to the documentation or something like that. And that's also a good place to start because everybody kind of wants to contribute to open source and nobody wants to write documentation. So if you're reading to start there and see how it goes, see how it feels, I think that's a good place to start.
Mhm.
And then on the community side of things, I think Odina, it's OMDENA, it's
Mhm.
a good place to start. They have like this local chapters that they organize where you can get like hands-on experience with a machine
Mhm.
learning project, and it's very low stakes. Like
Mhm.
there's no pressure and training like typically is included in these courses, which means like somebody separated a couple of chapter notebooks that everybody will review together, and you can always take something from that. So I think those are the two
Mhm.
main places to start.
Mhm. And while talking with you, so when I hear contribute to open source, to me the first thing that comes to mind, the first idea, and or like the way I see it is like there are libraries like scikit-learn, pandas, numpy, and when somebody says, "Hey, you can contribute to open source," what I have in mind is, okay, there is scikit-learn, there are some issues, and I go and fix this issue. But these are tools. But now, when we talked about this, and you mentioned working on open source projects, so I think these are different sorts of
Mhm.
open source projects. So it's not like you're working on a tool, but rather you use this tool to solve some other problem, right?
Exactly. Because you can also, yeah, there are dimensions to open source, right? There are open source
Yeah.
code, there are open source data, there are open source tools. And I think like it's cool to contribute to open source tools, but I think it's also the most overwhelming place to start.
Yeah.
Because like if you go like to NumPy and try to see the structure of the code, there are layers and layers and layers of it. Or like when you have a problem with NumPy and you go to their issues and you see the issues, there's probably somebody who's already tagged on that and is already developing on that. That's not to say that you cannot contribute, right? But I think like the smaller libraries, they are usually a more welcoming place to start. And honestly, open source data, it's also, I think, overlooked a lot of
Mhm.
time. Like if you can get a fully like open source project with open source code, open source library, and a final product, I think that's like
Mhm.
really adds value to that.
Mhm. And you also mentioned the course, community course at Hugging Face.
Mhm.
Um, I assume it was also like open source, followed
Yeah,
open
yeah,
source.
fully open
Yeah.
source.
Which is very close to me because this is how
Mhm.
we do courses in Datadog Club. So we use GitHub and like everyone can contribute. And while it's not open source in the sense that it's not like a library, pandas, right? But it's still open to everyone for learning and for contributing.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
makes it cool, right?
No, yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it too. Like I took some of the boot camps, not entirely, just specific modules that I was interested in. And I think it's really nice because it's getting harder and harder to get like true good sources of information in tech space.
Mhm.
Especially nowadays. Like I feel if you Google something, you end up with the first 5 pages is just entries that look like they were made by ChatGPT, and then things kind of go wrong. So when you have like somebody who truly made the content and thought
Mhm.
about it and put something together, it makes a lot of difference.
Mhm. Okay, and when it comes to projects, we talked about courses, but this AI for Good, you said one of the places was is Amdina, and this is where you
Mhm.
found your project too, right? Or was
Yeah,
it some?
yeah, that was
Okay.
where I found my project. And actually, like I had so one of the people I met in the first project invited me to organize another chapter with her. So now in December, we'll be co-organizing a chapter on green space segmentation in Frankfurt. So if
Hmm.
people are interested, they can also come join my local chapter. I'll be more than happy to welcome them.
Space segmentation.
Yeah, green space segmentation.
Well, what
So
does it mean?
essentially, like if you have a garden or a forest in a city, and you have
It's not like
either
outer space, it's more like space on Earth.
space on Earth, yes,
Yes.
not outer
Like
space,
territory. Territory, yeah.
territory.
Okay.
And then you have like there are a couple of different satellites. The most, I think, the one I'm most familiar with is Sentinel-2, which essentially circles around the Earth and take pictures for free.
Hmm.
And I think for Frankfurt, there is also high aerial, like drone, high quality images for the area.
Hmm.
And the challenge is from these images, how are you able to process them to have as a result a segmentation map of the city? So what are the gardens, what are the forests, what are the green spaces that are available? Can you map this back to what is supposed to be your ground truth? And it's really focused on that. And our main idea at the moment is to benchmark different strategies, like from CNNs to more transformers based slash member based approaches, and see like which truly is the best, or well, truly is the best, a bit ambitious, but what is that is actually doable. Because that's also like I have like I think sometimes things perform great in research. When you try to use it in real life, it's just not doable because not everybody has access to like the service. And if it takes a whole day to input like to predict one image, then how much time do you really have for that? Like who has the resources to really do that? So it has that to like we want to get the green space map out, but we also want to sound out like if somebody has to do this for another city, like what would be the correct way to do it or like the best way to do it?
Hmm. As I understood, the project you did before, it had also like something geospatial, right?
Yeah.
And when you were looking for your first freelance job, actually the company you ended up working for needed the exact skills that you developed
Hmm.
during this project, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. And maybe that will happen again here. I don't know. Maybe my next freelance will be exactly like the scenario. But I think that's a really good story. Like you learn a skill in a project hands-on. And I mean, for Adina, there's no expectation that you will work 20 hours or 15 hours. It's really like if you have 5 hours in a week, just like a half a day or after work for 2 to 3 days, you just join a project and you work with other people to try to come up with a solution.
Mhm.
It's a very, I think it's a cool way to learn new skills and a lot less
Mhm.
overwhelming if you do like with a team.
Mhm. Would you say that it typically happens that the skills you pick up on such projects, they're hands-on skills that translate to job skills?
I think so. First,
Mhm.
I think everybody gives the same advice when it comes to data science, like build your portfolio, do
Yeah,
this,
right.
do
There are
that.
so many ways of doing that, right?
Exactly. There are a lot of different ways of doing that. But like as I grow in my career, I realized that people are also looking for soft skills, right? When they hire you, they just don't want somebody who's great at their job but cannot work with anybody else. And I think when you do projects like this, you are forced to pick up soft skills because if
Hmm.
you have 80 people working on the same project, you have to communicate well, you have to be able to follow up what's going on, you have to be able to access resources and figure things on your own, to not be overwhelmed when you open Slack and there are 30 messages
Hmm.
on one single channel and you don't know where to look for. I think those it's also a great place to develop those skills. Because
Hmm.
I think a lot of engineering and data science also the mindset that you apply to what you're doing and the like if you are alone you're working alone, I'm sure that you're developing very hard
Hmm.
skills and very technical skills, but then maybe you are missing out on developing
Hmm.
a little bit more of the
Hmm.
mindset.
And also, when you work alone, you don't necessarily know what are the kind of good relevant skills you pick.
Mm, it's true.
And when you work on a project and there are people who already have experience who guide, right? You have
Yeah,
those people in the projects.
you do have people who have more technical skills, but when you have applied projects, usually people who work in that specific field also show up. So for the first project, we were working with seagrass segmentation, and there were people who just did seagrass monitoring for their job, like their life was to understand like where they live and how they model and how
Mm-hmm.
to segment in them. Then they show up and they're really willing to help because
Mm-hmm.
that also benefits them at their job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really cool place because you really are exposed to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different types of people.
Hmm. And they are probably more in consultant roles rather than hands-on roles, right? So they teach you about their expertise, about the best way of doing things, but then you implement.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then also, I think it's cool because, like, I always say this, and it seems so silly, but if you're interested in a job, the best way to get information for that job is add somebody on LinkedIn who has that job title,
Hmm.
who works in the way, and just ask them questions.
Hmm.
And that can be scary, I understand. But worst case scenario, you just never get a reply. And
Hmm.
best case scenario, you get some good free advice, right?
Hmm.
And I think with Adina, what happens is because everybody's is meshed into the same project, that communication and the question is more free. So you can just ask somebody, okay, so like, but what do you actually do for your job? Like,
Hmm.
what is your day to day look like?
Hmm.
And I think that's very valuable because I
Hmm.
think a lot of people, when they join data science, I don't think they fully understand the difference between
Hmm.
positions. And sometimes those names can be quite confusing too. Like a data scientist in company X won't do the same that company Y and so forth.
Hmm. It's funny now if you say company X, it may mean the actual company X.
Oh, no, not the actual company X, the same imaginary company X.
Yeah, right. And did you say 80 people or 18? Like, was it 80?
80. Yeah.
Okay, so that many people working on one
Yeah.
project.
But,
But like it's
I don't,
super overwhelming.
yeah.
How
But,
do you
it
even know what to
starts.
work on? Like when there are so many
um,
people.
So it starts with 80, and then week by week, people fizzle out. So I think towards the end, it was a core of about 25 people working on the project all the time. So the beginning is chaotic, but things do settle down.
Because the entrance barrier is pretty low, right? Or
Hmm.
like what do you actually need to have or to do in order to start working on a project?
Time,
Okay. Well, it's
willingness to
already tough.
learn.
Okay.
Time, willingness to learn, and you need to sign a chart. It's like the chart of conduct, just saying that, you behave like a normal person, you will not harass people on Slack, and
Uh-huh.
that's it. Like
Okay.
the barrier is pretty low.
Okay. And then like people realize, oh, maybe it's not for me, or I don't have as much time as I thought I would have, right? And then
Yeah,
instead of 80 at the end, like maybe 4 weeks later, 8 weeks later, it's 25.
yeah. But all, in my experience, almost all open source projects are like that. You have a really good turnover rate because
The
again, the
same at
bird,
Data Talks Club for
uh,
most of the activities we have.
yeah, that's just part of doing things open source. Like,
Uh,
and in a way, I think that's good.
mhm. And you kind of have to plan, like if you're organizing a project like that, you have to plan knowing this.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's good. People show like the people that are interested in. I think it's just that when people sign up, they don't really know what they are expecting. And then maybe this time they won't be able to stay for the full course, like for the full project, or they get overwhelmed. But then at least they know how to sign up for next time, and then the next time they come, they have a better expectation.
Hmm.
So like there's no penalty for signing up
Hmm.
and 3 weeks in realizing that you don't have
Hmm.
the time for that, or like circumstances changes at your work and then you won't have time anymore. But if you learn anything from the project, I think that's already a huge benefit. Like having realistic expectations about what you can get out of these projects and how you
Hmm.
contribute, I think it's super important.
So it's not like I join and then 1 week later I bounce, I decide to leave, and that Omdina is forever close to me.
No, 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 not at all.
So, because then later, if I don't know, half a year later, I realized that it's more clear to me what I want to do. And now I do have time, and now I have more realistic expectations of what to do there. The door is still open, right?
Yeah, exactly. The door is still open. And also what I realized in this project too is some people they really want to contribute, but what like the words that you are talking to them, they mean nothing to them. Like if you're a complete beginner, you join a project and somebody goes, okay, I need you to do a push to that branch. They have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like they don't understand what you're talking about. So you have to like you have to be clear about that as yourself too. So I saw a lot of like people saying, okay, I need some hand holding or like I am a complete beginner. What's the
Mhm.
first thing that I can do about it? And sometimes like if you have a good team of people, they will adjust your level. Like for example, I had this student, I think he was 17 tops when I was in the Athena project, and he would send me messages. I was like I want to help, but I don't know what to do. And then, like sometimes I don't have like the people who have more experience, sometimes they don't have that much time.
Mm,
And then
yeah.
people who have a lot of time don't have a lot of experience.
Yeah. Classical
This
problem.
yeah, so sometimes you can just be like, okay, can you just go to the Hugging Face hub and find me 5 models that can do this task and just
Hmm.
check their model cards if they have the performance. And these people will be more than happy to help to do that because they have the time to go and check it and they will learn something from it. Because now they learn like where models are, how to download a
Hmm.
model, what's a model performance. So it's a really a cool way to collaborate with other people.
And now, because we have tools like ChatGPT, you can just tell them, hey, like this is what you should talk to ChatGPT about and perhaps learn from it.
Yeah, true. But also like in my experience, because I also teach AI, like when people go too deep into ChatGPT, they get more lost. Because ChatGPT, like
Okay.
if you go to ChatGPT asking a very advanced question, like how
Mhm.
do I validate a segmentation model, ChatGPT will give you a advanced answer.
Mhm.
Even if you ask it to simplify, like it's a matter of vocabulary and it's a matter
Mhm.
of understanding. Like you have an answer, but you also cannot understand the answer
Mhm.
that you have.
Yeah, I have this problem right now. So, like for things I am good at, the answers usually make sense, right? Because I have background that I need in order to understand the answers. But for things I'm a newbie at, like for example, I'm experimenting with Arduino right now, which
Mhm.
is like hardware stuff. Sometimes it gives me pretty advanced answers, and then I have no idea like how do I apply, and then I have to like do a step-by-step understanding, and then ask a lot of questions, and then I have like 10 chats asking about different things, and it's overwhelming.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
I completely understand that. That happens to
Mhm.
me too. Like sometimes when I'm trying to do stuff, like especially I'm on Linux, I had a problem with my audio and I was like, okay, Ubuntu like 24.0, how to fix audio issue. And if you try to ask ChatGPT, like he comes up with terrible advice, and you're like, okay, I'm not doing that. Like, where's the forum? Like, where are the devs that know what they're doing?
Yeah. And then you come across something even more cryptic. At least that was my experience with Ubuntu.
Yeah, it is. But it's good. I really
It's fun,
like
yeah.
it.
It's like your life is never boring when
Oh
you use
no.
Linux.
No. And like I had some friends in college that we had this joke that when you know nothing about Linux, you're very responsible. And when you know a lot about Linux, you're very responsible. When you do just enough, oh, that's when you have confidence enough to try
Uh,
things, but you have no like way to tell if you're doing something good or something bad. So you end up doing a lot of weird things.
mm. Okay, so we also wanted to talk about your Substack. So tell us
Hmm.
about that. What do you do? What do you work on there?
So I have a Substack called Data Like, and it's me and Denis, and we created this Substack to talk about women in data. Data is a broad field, anything from a data analyst to data viz to machine learning. And it was again, I wish I could have a revelation. I have a super cool story to tell. But honestly, I worked with Denis in the past and I was like reflecting last year, like it was around Christmas. And I was like, I really wish we could like do something like that again because we had a group that we had a weekly meeting about like just a study group on machine learning engineer with women from all over the world. We would just find a day in the week and we would study a certain topic. And it ran for, I did this twice, one in Portuguese, like it focused on Brazil, and another more open. And together they ran for about 3.5 months. And then it becomes like too messy to handle that. Because then like if you do a study group, in my experience, for more than 3 months, everything just collapsed because people change schedules and so forth. So it's quite complicated. So I wanted to do something similar. And I was thinking about it and I started researching about like, okay, so what are the statistics about women in data? Like what is like? And I came to the conclusion that if I wanted to do something about that, the best way would be just to tell the stories about the people who are working in the field. So in the Substack, we really just find people who are working in data science and machine learning, and we interview how they got started, what they learned in the journey so far, like what are the aspects that they like about their job, what is their advice. And we've been doing this for about 10 months now. We launched
Mhm.
in January.
Which it's a really cool thing that you do. Thanks. Which reminded also me of an interview I think we had 1 year ago. Maybe you know Sarah from Morocco? No?
No, no, no.
No.
But
So Sarah,
I'll check it out.
yeah, so we had an interview called "Make an Impact Through Volunteering Open
Mhm.
Source Work," which I think
Mhm.
is super in line with what we talk
Okay,
about
how to
here.
find Sarah.
And Sarah, yeah, you should definitely talk because so what she was talking about, she had a similar idea, and they had a WhatsApp group with just women. And what they did is they were looking for hackathons to
Super
take part,
cool.
and then they would just do one hackathon after another, and they would often win there.
Hmm.
So yeah, you definitely need to talk. And
Yeah, yeah. It's super cool. I think the idea for the Substack is just try to make it more accessible because
mhm, yeah,
when you do groups, you have a group and then
mhm,
eventually like it's just that. And I don't know. I feel like it in a way was my way to give something back to the community and to
mhm,
have more women voices out there.
mhm. Can you tell us about your last few issues of Substack? Like what two last newsletters? What did you talk about there?
So our last newsletter came out today. It was with Bianca Haberman. She's a researcher in bioinformatics. And she was like talking about how she got started and like the projects. I think the most interesting part about this interview, like she talks about how hard it is to take a leadership role and how like different it is to manage people and different projects. And she tells a story about a tool that she developed. It's a specific research tool that was very impactful for the community. And it took her 10 years to develop this tool,
Mhm,
like from scratch to the current version that she has right now. And she talked like about how in the beginning people were very skeptical and she has to prove that like this project and this tool really worked, that you could use the like you could do automatically data analysis through this tool. And then now people really like reach out to her about this tool and like, okay, can you come talk about it? We're having a workshop, which would be interesting to come checking in. And then the last one was about the second to last one was about somebody who had started working in fake news detection. And she was working with, I think, a fellowship, if I'm not mistaken, from Google. And she was applying the job that she was developing to manage like fake news and toxic content in AI communities. But we had quite a lot of different, quite different profiles. We had already had people who that was Marisa. So she works in AI ethics and sustainability, and she was like talking about when she started. It took a week to train a logistic regression model,
mhm,
and that people in the computer science didn't take AI seriously at all because they
mhm,
thought like like there's no mathematical rigor in AI.
mhm,
It's just experimentation. So people would
mhm,
think that AI is not as valid. And I don't think anybody would say that today. So it's
mhm,
like really meaningful. And also there were a couple like one that it's like I thought it was super touching. Is somebody who started, I forgot her name right now, but she created a YouTube channel to teach machine learning in Aruba. so
Hmm.
people could learn machine learning in their mother tongue, and I thought it was
Hmm.
so nice. Like
Hmm.
it's not the kind of thing that you typically think about, but it's super impactful in a real life scenario.
Where is this country? Is it in Africa somewhere?
Yeah,
Because I don't like I've heard the name of the language, but
I think I think it's in between Nigeria and Ghana that are all the
okay.
speakers.
So basically, each newsletter issue is an interview with
Hmm.
a woman who did
Hmm.
something, and then you want to share their stories, right?
Yeah, exactly. I
Uh-huh.
mean, it's really cool because some people they come from typical backgrounds. Some people did a total career 180, and like you can always like take something like some valuable advice from each one of them. And it's always like the ones that I found more interesting is I remember somebody who we interviewed. She was a LinkedIn car instructor, and we asked, "So how did you get started?" And she just said, "There was a form. I filled it, and they contacted me." So
Hmm.
you
Okay.
know, like sometimes you're like, okay, so I can just do that if I'm interested in doing that. And I
Hmm.
think that's a very it seems like silly or obvious, but I think that's a very valuable career lessons.
Hmm.
Like if you want something, ask for it.
Hmm.
If you
And things are simpler than they appear, right? Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes they are.
And it's quite empowering, right? It's quite motivating because, like, now you know that the only thing between you now and you being a course instructor is this form.
Yeah, and like I also think it forces people to put themselves out there, which I think if there's anything I regret about the beginning of my career is I overthought every single thing that I did. And I regret doing that because you have like we can just try things. And if things fail, things move on.
Hmm.
You learn from it. You can try the worst case scenario, you get rejected, but
Hmm.
rejection is not the end of the world. So I think as long as you keep exposing yourself out and out there, like you really grow as a
Hmm.
person and you kind of like also learn a lot from it.
Hmm. And if somebody is listening to this right now and think they have a story that they want to share, what's the best way to contact you?
You can contact me via LinkedIn, or you
Hmm.
can honestly, if you're on Substack, you can just write to us on Substack on Data Like.
Uh-huh.
Just send us a private message there and we will take your
Is it
story and be more happy to
data
share.
like or lake?
Like
Data like.
like hard.
Okay. Uh, I don't see a link. Data like Substack. Probably I cannot Google, but you'll send us a.
Yeah, yeah, I'll send
Okay,
you.
found it. So there is a woman reading a book, and it says data like. We are a
Hmm.
newsletter dedicated to put the spotlight on women's journeys and achievement in the data-related field, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
That's us.
So put in the link now to the chat. And yeah, I think that's all we have time for today. So it was amazing. Thanks for sharing your story. And I think it was motivating and it will be motivating for many people.
I hope so.
Yeah.
If
So
you
thanks a
have,
lot for doing that.
yeah, thanks so much for having me. And if people want to reach out and want to have a talk, I'm more than welcome to help. Message me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I, worst case scenario, I take a while to reply, but I usually reply to everybody.
Okay,
Okay.
Isabella, thanks a
Thank you
lot.
so much,
And
Alexei.
thanks everyone for joining us today. And well, today is Friday, so have a nice weekend. And
Have a nice weekend too.
we'll see each other pretty soon.